Hello everyone and welcome to the second stream of SCP Canons. Now I'm going to be continuing with the Coldest War, and also I've set up something for y'all to look at while I'm actually doing this reading. And I hope you enjoy it. Alright, let's see if it's showing up correctly. Yeah, I did a little slideshow. So yeah, there'd be at least something for you to look at besides just the words I'm reading. Although I'm willing to, take suggestions and all that. But anyway, now that I know that is about working, let's get back to the story. Matryoshka. Part 3, I believe, is what we're currently on. Yep. Right. Just need to get it opened up. Okay. Matryoshka. Part 3. The sudden electric buzz of the cell door unlocking assaulted the doctor's ears as he lay on the bare metal cot. Instinctively recoiling from the noise, he raised a scrap of his coat to shield his eyes from the light. The light flooding the chamber. A shadow of a person entered, the face obscured by the blinding lamps hiding in the hallway outside. He backed his way into a corner, desperate to avoid the blows that he knew were about to resume. He trembled as the door closed, restoring the darkness. Several seconds passed. It was not until a full minute had gone by without violence that he dared uncover his eyes. Standing over him was a trim, blond-haired man, his uniform cap tucked under his arm along with a large manila envelope. The man's smile was natural, and yet somehow it suited for his hard face. "Hello, Dr. Gessler. My name is Major Maxim Chernikov. I'm here to remove you from these premises." The doctor began to sit up. Chernikov's smile upset him. He shrank back further into the corner. The major laughed. "Oh, no. Not take you out and have you shot, of course. They wouldn't send me here to do such a mundane task like that. I'm a great admirer of your work, by the way. I'd offer to shake your hand, but, you know." He motioned to the doctor's ragged bandaged right hand. It was missing 3 fingers. Gessler brought his right arm closer to his body, cradling his ruined hand. "I cannot give you what you want," his voice quivered as he trembled. "The critical portions are in the laboratory, yes. I am familiar. So you have repeatedly informed my men. You must forgive them. They are merely brutes of little imagination. But they have their uses. For example, they have convinced me that you are telling the truth." Chernikov tossed the manila folder onto the cot. Gessler, startled, jumped out of his seat, away from the parcel. The major laughed once again. "Relax. You're going to be fine, and that's because you're going to answer a different set of questions. Questions of my own, Doctor. No, don't fret. I promise you'll know the answers to these ones, or the outcome will be very quick and clean." Chernikov suddenly pulled his sidearm, unholstering and drawing in one fluid motion as he pointed his pistol at Dr. Geisler's forehead. Tell me, Doctor, who agreed with Socrates that the soul must possess multiple parts? What? The Russian cocked the hammer of his pistol, hand steady. The smile was gone now. The doctor struggled to find his voice. Glaucon. Chernikov's pistol remained fixed in place. Gessler imagined what he could feel the barrel boring into his forehead. Which culture never developed the concept of human soul? The doctor froze in fear. The Pariha tribe of the Masi River. Why? 3 Hun and how many Po? Gessler stared, uncomprehended and terrified. How many Po? You subhuman Nazi filth! Chernikov's voice stayed steady. 7! There are 7! The doctor pleaded. Chernikov kept the pistol pointed at Gessler's head. 1 second. 2 seconds. He lowered his weapon. His smile returned. The gun back in his holster, while the doctors quietly wept, apparently still capable of being relieved to be alive. Good. Your wits are still about you. No sign of concussion. I left very specific instructions on that account. We're going to need your mind intact. Chernikov rapped smartly on the cell door 3 times. It opened promptly. A uniformed adjutant handed the major a radio headset. Oh, come now, Doctor. We're on the verge of a great discovery. If you're lucky, we might even allow your name to remain in the history books. Open that envelope. Now. The doctor tried to regain a measure of composure. He pulled the envelope closer. Chernikov began speaking Russian into the headset. He opened it, shook the envelope to dislodge its contents. Out tumbled photographs of Leslie and the children. His eyes went wide. Chernikov paid no attention to the doctor as he continued his conversation. A scratchy, monotone voice spoke at length from the headset, occasionally pausing to allow Chernikov to speak briefly. Gessler studied the photograph. The street signs outside of the house were clearly visible. Ashbury Lane. They had been discovered. The major rapped 3 more times on the door. His conversation now over, the adjutant reappeared, this time with 2 additional guards. The doctor had not seen these ones previously. There's one more item in the envelope, Doctor. You'll need to see this one. It will be comforting to you. The doctor friendly looked Chernikov in the eye. The Russian looked confident, unconcerned. He peered into the envelope, spotted something tucked in the bottom. He fished out with his good hand. I collected that myself as a favor. I thought you might like a reminder. Many of my men in my battalion like to carry these around. Dr. Gessler held the lock of jet black hair, tied with white lace that he instantly recognized from Leslie's wedding gown. She won't miss it, of course. They told me she was sleeping quite soundly. My men were in and out before anyone woke up, it seems. They're very good at that. The doctor took the full measure of Chernikov's words. He had imagined his own life to be forfeit once he had come to this place. It was only a matter of time, he thought. As far as Leslie knew, he had been dead since 1945, a necessary condition of his arrangement with the Foundation. Death seemed a formality, a setting of accounts long outstanding. But he had never imagined that the Foundation would be compromised to the point of exposing his family. The full extent of the damage had become more clear. His thoughts branched out again, past his own immediate demise. I trust we have your full, unhesitating cooperation now, Doctor. Gessler placed his feet on the floor and slowly, agonizingly stood up on bruised and bleeding legs. He crossed 3 stumps and an intact finger around his lock of. Oh. He closed 3 stumps and an intact ring finger around the lock of his wife's hair, clenching it in his fist. Fresh blood seeping out of the wounds on his hand, and heart started to drip. Yes, Major. Chernikov beckoned the guards to the cell. Clean this one up. Get him some clothes. Feed him while you're at it. The guards made their way to the doctor, beginning to ease him out of the cell, in a strangely gentle manner. Chernikov donned his cap and started down the hall, already ahead of the party. We're heading back to Site 7, Doctor. There's much to do. The GURP official disappeared around the corner. The guards eased the doctor into a wheelchair, waiting outside his cell. The doctor made a note to himself to properly thank Major Chernikov when he had the chance. He had thought that he wished for death before this visit, but he knew now that he was mistaken. There's something to live for, after all. Dr. Gessler's swollen black eye and cornea abrasions made his expression unreadable to any of the attending guards and medics. His newly kindled hatred went unnoticed. And that is part 4 of Matryoshka. Or part 3 of Matryoshka. After a short break, I will be moving on to part 4. Just need to make sure everything is in order. And I hope you are enjoying all these images I found and placed up. Most of these are from Sunny Clockwork. They have a lot of amazing art. It's the purely black and white ones, like the one you're currently seeing. They have so much art. There are 4 of them. You'll notice that they have the same art style that are specifically from the Matryoshka story. And I cannot quite remember what the other artist was. But I'll see you in a little bit. Enjoy the images. Alright, let's move on to Part 4. Matryoshka Part 4. The muddy slush of frozen earth soaked into Spinella's clothes as he writhed on the ground, grasping for air, spitting blood. From his neck he watched the old man's shadow on the ground beside him lengthen and darken. No, this was not the plan at all. The two checkpoint guards did not notice the solidifying darkness cast into the ground as they barked questions into the radio. As they looked next to the prone figure of Spinella on the ground, they would have seen the black outline of the old man's shadow growing ever thicker, solidifying until it appeared to corrode the ground beneath it. The snow it touched instantly evaporated into thick vapor. Thin black lines trailed at sharp angles and hanged in the air. Inexplicably rose from the ground where the shadow had now formed a yawning hole, its depths impossible to see. Spinella weakly gurgled his protest, wheezing an attempt to get to his hands and knees away from the forming darkness. Yara wheeled on him as he saw movement from the corner eye and then stopped dead as he saw what was rising for the old man's shadow. The outline of a door had formed, translucent and black, fixed in mid-air like frozen smoke and hovering over the shadow void cast by the old man. The chuckling of the wasted, wheelchair-bound husk was now manic and high-pitched, an obscene tittering. Inside the door was the same infinite black disc being cast on the ground. The rough rectangular flame of the door grew more and more defined, its angle sharpening. As Yuri turned to alert his comrade, 3 men were suddenly thrown at great force through the other portal, smashing into him as they all piled onto the ground. For a second, no one in the heap on the ground moved. The lean guard's eyes were wild with disbelief. Moving from his comrade to the men who were suddenly materialized, the first to come to their senses was Juhaz atop the pilot. He quickly found leverage and pushed himself forward, lowering a shoulder into the stomach of the lean guard and tackling him to the ground. A mad scramble ensued. Yuri, now kicking and swinging his fist in all directions, he tried to free himself from the scrum. He caught Stillwell square in the chest, driving the wind out of him and leaving him gasping as the burly Russian soldier found his footing. Kugan squared to face him. Behind Yuri, Jahaz had managed to pin the lean guard to the ground, allowing a free hand to grasp into his inner coat. He drew a stout, thick-bladed service knife. The guard seized a split-second of opportunity. One of his hands shot to Jahaz's neck in a flash, the other frantically reaching for the knife. The 2 men rolled sideways, struggling for the blade. In the confusion, Yuri's gun had been knocked from his hands, about a meter away from him. He looked sidelong at it briefly, baiting Kugan into rushing him. Yuri tripped him as he moved forward, getting him onto the ground and quickly bringing a knee to Kugan's neck. Before he could crush the prone operative's larynx, Yuri saw Stillwell going for the rifle on the ground. He was on his feet again almost instantly, his brawny limbs bellying the quickness and precision of his movements, moving as though he were made of springs and not metal. A huge fish came barreling straight for Stillwell's face. Stillwell snatching up the gun, and with the AK-47 stock, deftly nudged the Russian's arms mid-swing, parrying the strike and letting the soldier's bone-crushing force carry his momentum forward. Stillwell met that momentum, slamming his knee onto the man's midsection as hard as he could. He could feel the telltale crack of a rib breaking as he struck. His foe bent over, incapacitated momentarily. Stillwell glanced over his shoulder. He saw Juhaz and the lean guard, blood covering the 2 combatants as they struggled on the ground. The snow around them, now a morass of the brown. red and white. Johaz had managed to get atop, both hands on the handle of the knife, and he pressed it towards the first guard's chest. The guard was breathing hard, almost hyperventilating, as he tried with all his strength to push the knife away. The hands wrapped around the attackers, desperately trying to move the blade, its edge closing over his heart. Johaz was trembling with the exertion, leaning down into the palm of the knife with all his weight. The adrenaline sped his thought process, and Stillwell acted. Turning forward once more, he seized Yuri's lapels and crossed them over his throat, tying them in his fist and pulling the collar over his mouth into a noose. The guard's eyes bulged as the air was cut off, the face twisting with pain, hatred, and fear. He reached for Stillwell's wrist and wrenched violently, trying to free himself from the chokehold. Stillwell would feel tendons and ligaments start to give in his arms as the massive Russian squeezed and pulled, the pain slowing time to a standstill. 15 seconds, and then he could help Johannes. Hold out for 15 seconds. The Russian's face was draining of color as the blood supply was cut off. Panic made his movements less and less coordinated, and still was now able to force the man onto his knees. He took several punches to the ribs as his opponent flailed. The glancing blow still hard enough to make Yuri flinch and loosen his grip. Finally, with what would have been his last reserve of strength, Yuri aimed a blow directly at Stillwell's right wrist. The Russian's fist caught him at a critical angle, and Stillwell felt a pop as his wrist broke. His hold on Yuri's left lapel was gone. The soldier was now free. Yuri seemed to require no time to collect himself. He prepared to hurl himself at the disabled Stillwell, when 3 whooshing cracks sounded in a quick succession. The side of Yuri's head collapsed as bits of skull, hair, and brains were ejected forcefully from the now gaping hole, where his right ear was an instant prior. He fell face forward into snow, steam rising from the welter of blood pouring out of his head. Stillwell took several seconds before he looked over from where the shots had been fired. Spinell had pulled himself to his feet and gone to the guard's rifle. Kugan was starting to regain his footing. Juhaz Stillwell cradled his broken wrist and moved to the other fight. Juhaz was working the tip of the blade into the link guard's chest. Rugged grunts and shouts came from below him as the soldier struggled against the blade with animal ferocity. Blood beginning to well up now from the wound. Spinell's training the rifle on the 2 combatants. "Stop!" Stillwell shouted. "You're going to hit both of them." Spinell ignored him, lining up the iron sights, taking careful aim. His hands were trembling slightly. The sounding seemed to prick Johannes' ear. With a spasm of effort, he slammed the knife downward, through the Russian's death grip of the blade, burning into his chest. The lean guard gurgling, then gasped. His hand suddenly falling away. Juhaz firmed up his grip on the handle, and with a rugged grunt of exertion, twisted the knife with both hands, sending an arterial spray out from the man's chest. The sound of ripping flesh and tearing sinew audible to the men 3 meters away. The ground was sopping with blood, the scene resembling the end of some animal's hunt. The link guard shuddered, then stilled. Spinella lowered the rifle. The four Foundation operatives looked to each other. No one spoke. Stillwell surveyed the carnage. The portal was now gone. The impossible gulf next to the old man disappeared, replaced with the shadow that nature demanded. Juhasz got to his feet, his suit soaked in blood, his mustache sticky and dripping with it. His expression was blank. Kugan looked like he was about to be sick. The old man chuckled from his wheelchair, untouched by the scene that unfolded around him. Why didn't you just shoot the asshole while you had him stunned? Spinell shouted at Stillwell. No gunfire. Those were the orders. Spinell looked at his hand. The angle was just as wrong. Broken for sure. Fuck orders. Does this look like a mission? Look like the mission at this point? We need to go. Juhasz interrupted as he picked up the Lingard's rifle, looking out beyond the checkpoint. Now! Stillwell nodded, his arms beginning to throb. Where? We're out in the open. They're going to send patrols any minute, said Coogan. Juhasz slung the rifle over his shoulder. He looked at the surrounding buildings, narrowing his eyes. That's the cloth hall beyond the gate here. I know a place that should be good enough to hide from the military police for a while. Come. Juhasz broke into a jog, hopping over the gate arm at the checkpoint and heading for a low, pale building in the distance, surrounded by an arched walkway. Stillwell turned to Coogan. Get the skip. Spinella coughed. You can't be serious. Leave the fucker. We don't want anything for the Soviets. We don't leave anything for the Soviets, replied Stillwell. He nodded to Coogan. Coogan nodded back and hoisted the man out of the chair, gingerly setting him over one of his shoulders. The low cackling continued unabated. The three men followed after Juhasz behind them. Two bodies surrounded by splashes of red snow lay on an empty wheelchair, standing sentinel over the scene. As the Foundation operatives disappeared in the distance, sirens began to wail. And that is part 4 of Matryoshka. Oh boy. And as with that time, I'll take a short break to hear my voice a little rest. Because I am not yet entirely used to talking for extended periods of time. So, I will speak to you shortly. Alright, it's time to go on to Matryoshka, Part 5. Oh, let's see, we have a tough one. Nechayeva emerged from the utility panel in a frozen alleyway about a 30-minute tread through the underground service corridors. She recognized her surroundings as a nearby power substation. She also met by the sounds of sirens at the distance. She kept her pistol in her hand, low and out of sight, and as out of sight as possible, as she made her way to the edge of a nearby fence, taking care to step out on the patches of bare ground between the small drifts of snow. She looked around the corner, searching out the third utility pole on the left side of the street. She looked for the white chalk mark. It wasn't here. It wasn't there. Her curse left her lips as a sharp trail of white steam in the cold winter air. The drop was compromised. Someone at command had made the call to abandon the other part of the operation to secure the group safe house. Were the signs of the aftermath of the operation's failure? In any event, there was no extraction team, no place to leave the documents, nobody waiting to take SCP-1041, and the fruits of 3 years of research out of Zardev's hands. A truck sped by, kicking us up a trail of dirty slush as 10 security officers, rifles at the ready, made their way up whatever has caused a disturbance that had to be in the vicinity of the drop point. If the signs were in distinction, she thought back to the briefing in Novosibirsk. This section of Krakow was a restricted area under Red Army jurisdiction. Security protocols would mean that at least 3 other trucks would be en route to an alarm like this. Plans B and C looked to be shot as well. Several steps back, she retreated into the service corridor, possibly in possibilities and permutations of the likely situation shifted through her mind. The planners back home had spun the various intel sources into a tapestry of diverging scenes, all with potential to occur during the mission. Charnikov and his group, GRUP, delegation would certainly be arriving in person at Site 7, but possibly not until after her operation was complete. The possibility of a direct encounter between herself and any hostile was pegged at around 15%. The mission would have been scrapped at 20%. The Foundation was thought to be too busy cleaning up in America to mount to any sort of offensive action in Eastern Europe. The likelihood of interaction on their part was projected at 25%, set higher than the planners ordinarily would because of the desperate tone of the interception cable from their assets in Warsaw. Rumors, however, presided that group had a defector last month. A quick check-in with the field offices in Washington, London, Beijing, and Cape Town turned up nothing. Zerdev's defector was likely imaginary or dead. If he wasn't either of these, there's only one other place he could be. The planners. With much irritation, refused to rule out a Foundation mission in Krakow, occurring in the same window time as her operation. Try as Petrov did to train the planet's staff out of that habit, their assumptions were based on past mission histories, confirming intelligence, and state-of-the-art statistic models. Game theory. Rationality. Nachayeva and the rest of the KGB field operatives that dealt with this sort of thing were well informed on how fragile these assumptions could be. Nachayeva still herself had listened to the tenor of the sirens in the distance, allowing to echo the trucks and the bullhorns to wash over her perception. The cold air, brisk without biting, caressed her face. She inhaled deeply, concerning a faint whiff of truck exhaust through the cloy, metallic layer of ozone emitting from the tightly wound steel coils of the nearby power station. Copper? There was no point going back to the site without an escape plan. At this point, even a bad plan would have to do. But she needed to know more. Only group or foundation would be risking any sort of commotion now. Which would it be? Negotiations or bullets? No other answers would come before that one. She would have to go into the drop point regardless. She listened again for the sounds of the city blocks around her. Empty now except for soldiers. Most of the activity heading away from her. But through the faraway clutter, one noise seemed to be coming nearer. A high-pitched revving and buzzing. A bike by the sound of it. A single one. Likely looking for civilian stragglers. It was time to act. Nechayeva ran to the access gate of the nearby substation. The fence surrounding the substation was solid enough, but the door was secured by only one dead-bolted lock. The deadbolt looked solid, likely too much for the pig she had with her. So she counted off 10 paces away from the gate, then one step to the side. She gently set down the briefcase, then drew her pistol, showing her sights on the lock of the door. With steady hands, she exhaled, then squeezed the trigger. A sharp report, followed almost instantly by a dull thud as the slug ricocheted and buried itself in the wall about 3 meters away, head height. Picking up the briefcase again, she inspected the lock. Broken enough. She delivered a sharp kick to the door, flinging it open. The motorcycle had stopped in the distance at the sound of the pistol, and now the buzzing engine was heading directly for her position, about 4 blocks away, she reckoned. Quickly, she looked for the main control panel. The most prominent cluster of boxes and lights was next to a large standing metal coil. The heat of the coil had melted a circle in the fallen snow, leaving a prominent ring-shaped drifter surrounding it. Nechayeva paused. Then she ripped off a length of fabric from a civilian's coat, wrapped it around her right hand, tightly clutched the pistol. The motorcycle was almost there. She moved quickly. The soldier cut off the bikes and engines. He could barely hear the squelching and muted voices from his radio. The district commander would be furious when he found out that the perimeter had missed this substation. Maybe it had been nothing. His heart sank when he saw the broken lock and the footprints. It had been something. Best to solve it quickly. There was one set of footprints in the snow, leading into the substation interior. It had definitely been a gunshot, but only one person. It might have been one of the men of the platoon, screwing around after having too much to drink. In that case, it would be whoever he brought in that got the commissar's rage, and not him for missing a civilian security corridor. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. He rarely followed the footprints in this substation. They looked small to him. So much the better. The last thing he wanted was to try and wrestle some drunk, hulking oaf back to the base. His radio muted by his coach draped over the speaker, angrily demanding something. He thought he heard perimeter in the turret tirade somewhere. Shit. He hurried along, following the tracks. The soldier felt a radiating heat on his face as he went further in. Small twigs of metal creaking and groaning amid the tangle of cables and wires. The tiny hairs on his neck raised as though the current of the substation were leaking into the air around him. He came to a melted circle in the snow, bare ground marking a control console. The footprints ended. Damn it, stop messing around. We have to get back, he yelled to no one in particular. Every minute he was out looking, the commissar would be angrier and angrier. They would both get skinned if he was out here looking around all day. He scanned his surroundings in increasing desperation. His eye caught a briefcase lying against the edge. A briefcase lying against the edge of a snow circle, propped against a drift about 5 meters away. It was the only clue to a mystery that he needed to solve before the radio burned a hole in his hip with its rage. He gingerly approaches, each step measured and careful as he crouched low. Old habits learned on Mamayev Kurgan kicked in, and now he moved as quickly as he could without disturbing a single pebble or dirt clod. He kept a few pieces of distance as he smoothly and quietly unsheathed his combat knife, scanning the ground in front of him for any hints of wires or suspicious patches of fresh dirt. When he saw that the ground around the briefcase was cleared, he laid his rifle gently on the earth beside him and lowered himself into a prone position. He crawled the last meter to the briefcase, carefully, delicately tilted his head, examining the tiny sliver of daylight between the bottom of the case and the snowbank. Nothing. Almost clear. He took several deep breaths to steady his nerves. Faintly, he brought his knife forward in his left hand. Not ideal, but better suited to the position his body was in. Ever so gently, he began to work the tip of the blade against the case and the snowbank, listening for the slightest noise of any springs, bearings, or God knows what rolling around in the briefcase. He twisted his wrist slightly and started to work the knife as a lever, moving the briefcase slightly. Something right next to him burst out of the snowbank, sending piles of gray slush flowing through the air, and for a moment he thought he was dead. But the briefcase was still intact. Then he felt a weight slam into the middle of his back, the shock causing him to release the hold on his knife. He turned his knife to find a woman covered in snow. Her hands wrapped in rags pointed a pistol at his face as he drove her knee into his back. How? He stammered, still not convinced that he had not been blown up. The keys to your bike. He nodded back to the entrance. In the ignition. I left them. What is this? The woman stood up and kicked the soldier's rifle away, gun still trained between his eyes. Nechayev did not answer. She picked up the briefcase once more, her hands freezing, but not too numb to keep a finger around the trigger. She started to back away out of the substation. The soldier's eyes were still wide with shock at the ambush. He started the fresh round of profanity, blasting from the radio to the side. What did you tell them? Nothing. Just that I was checking out a gunshot, establishing the perimeter. What's causing the lockdown? No one knows. They don't tell us shit. And who are you anyway? What are you doing here? She motioned with a pistol to the soldiers to stand up, hesitantly, warily knowing what was coming. He obliged. He slowly put his hands behind his bed. "We're on the same side, comrade," said Nechayeva. She lowered his pistol and discharged 2 rounds, one into each of the soldier's knees. He screamed and dropped to the ground, writhing in pain, blood seeping through his fingers where he clutched at his wounds. "Now no one can tell you that you didn't do your duty," she said as she holstered her pistol. "Tell your commanding officer the truth. They'll sort it out eventually. My apologies." She turned and walked out of the substation. The soldiers, cursing, trailed after her. He spotted his bike at the entrance. She towed the briefcase in one of the saddlebags and mounted the bike. With a kickstart, started the small engine. In moments, she was speeding away from the scene. She made her way through several back streets and alleys, looking for an access point to a concrete drainage ditch that passed behind the rendezvous point. After a few blocks following a corrugated storm pipe from a nearby factory, she found it. Twisting the throttle, she zipped into the service road, ducking her head to avoid a tree branch growing around the disused gate. She immediately raced north down the concrete ditch, swerving to avoid the clumps of mud or debris that dotted it. Alerting the local authorities was less than ideal, but if KGB had an advantage over a group anywhere, it was dealing openly with the rest of the military. Hopefully this would prove more disruptive to Zerdev than KGB. That was a problem for later. For now, she was heading to the drop point. And that would be part 5 of Matryoshka. Once again, be taking a short break, and thank you for listening to this point. See you soon. Alright. Just about ready to continue the stream. Just give me a couple minutes. Alright, got some stuff figured out. Let's move on to Matryoshka, Part 6. We're about halfway there now. Oh. The Site-7 surgical auditorium, for all its wooded paneling, lined the walls, and the rows of well-worn theater-style seats might have been any one of 100 medical facilities of the rational world. Geisler thought to himself as he soldered wiring into place. The only discordant detail happened to be the bars over the windows of the viewing gallery. His thoughts were broken by the lancing pain of the soldering iron as it slipped again, burning his hand. He sharply inhaled, but stopped himself from exclaiming anything. The rat-faced guard looked as though he may enjoy such an outburst. And anyway, he didn't need help brought in to make this part of the work go quicker. This part of the project was for one man. He grasped the iron once more and bent over the ponderous bundle of cables and wires snaking its way through the metal conduit. So many little details, so many circuits that needed to be arranged just so. Even one out of place in this procedure would become very unpredictable indeed. The main door of the auditorium creaked open, making way for the march of 3 sets of high-ranking boots, come to check on his progress. His eyes stayed on his work. He knew who it was. "We've only been here for 2 hours. I thought you were joking when you said tonight." "He works fast, doesn't he? I think he wants to see the results as much as we do." Geisler recognized the unperturbed voice of Chernikov among the officers. He couldn't help but feel a twinge of anger at Chernikov's habit of speaking about him as though he wasn't even there in the room. He had practically invented this new branch of science that these thugs were so keen to exploit. His grip tightened on the soldering iron. A new voice, a wheezing, hoarse whisper. A woman, he thought. "The Colonel assembled 19th Congress, the 19th Congression Planning Committee in our agreed-upon location. They meet in 3 days. Do you think we'll be ready by then?" Chernikov addressed him now. "Dr. Geisler, what do you say? We'll be meeting our deadline for the project we discussed." Geisler turned, iron still in his hand. He saw Chernikov, flanked by a young attaché and a woman in a commissar's uniform. She was far younger than the voice he had heard moments ago. The doctor saw the apparatus he was conducting apparatus. It was constructing, reflecting back at him in her iron-like eyeglasses. "Assuming you have the subject in hand, we will be finished by this evening. I need those cages, and people to assemble them. Unless you want me hobbling around and putting those together too." Chernikov smiled. He pulled a small pad, scribbled a note, tore it off, and handed it to the young man at his elbow. With a salute, the attaché ran back down the hallway, out of the operation theater. "The things we can achieve when we work together, Commissar Rosenstein, I think are going to be pleased with our work tonight." Major Chernikov clapped a hand on the commissar's shoulder and turned to walk out. The commissar stood in place, looking at Geisler, her face impassive, eyes obscured by the reflective mass of metal and wire in their large, black-rimmed glasses. Geisler's hatred seemed to have left the room with Chernikov, replaced by a deep unease at the woman before him. He suddenly felt dizzy as he reached out to brace himself against the upright metal post serving as the apparatus's core. Trying to keep his balance, the soldering iron clattered to the floor. Commissar Rosenstein made no reaction. She continued to watch him silently. He steadied himself, head swimming. He returned her gaze, or he thought he did. With a neat about-face, the commissar turned around and began walking back out. His balance suddenly came back to him. He kept his hands on the post, just to be certain. She walked through the doors. They closed behind her. He looked at this rat-faced minder. His eyes were still on the room's exit. Fear plainly visible on his dull features. The doctor picked up his iron again, as well as a stray metal hose, attaching it to a nearby electrical port on the apparatus. No time to waste. SCP-1041 started to wake. She must have fallen asleep in her chair. She jerked her head just up from the armrest, the back of her head and the space behind her eyes throbbing sharply with pain. She groaned, her vision still blurry from waking. Slowly, she felt a pain in her throat, like a muscle strain. She held her hand under her chin, gently massaging the tender area. The room was too bright. She rubbed her eyes and sat up straight. In front of her sat a middle-aged man in a soldier's uniform, blond and smiling. His hat was perched tightly on his folded coat. On a table beside him, hair slightly messy, slightly amused. Behind him stood a woman in a different uniform. Dark hair, glasses. She had a clipboard. Ah, you're awake. Wonderful. He reached out a gloved hand and gently took hers as she instinctively flinched from the presence of the strangers. Shh. It's okay. It's okay. I'm a friend. You're fine. Though you may not remember how you got here. Do you remember? She thought, searching through her memories. The headache and the bright lights are making her feel disoriented. How did she get here? What was the last thing she recalled? Cell of some sort? Possibly? How did she get there in the first place? The details are unclear. Let's start with your name. Do you remember your name? Who are you? She thought. An instant passed. Why wasn't this obvious? Then something surfaced in her mind. My name is Aline Warner. Aline Warner from South Kensington. The man in front of her smiled, nodding at the answer. Aline Warner, he repeated to the woman next to him. She lifted a few pages on a clipboard before writing a series of notes. Aline Warner, number 73 in the sequence, as expected. The woman's voice was hoarse, ugly, breathless, and grating. He turned back to her. Any more details you can give us? Nothing too personal, mind you. Occupation, parents' names. Then we'll be done, and you can take your leave. Her heart raced faster, despite the apparent end of the questions. What is this? Am I under arrest? What's going on? She was starting to remember. She had been in a cell before, but the people were different, and they hadn't been military before. Just a few more details, Miss Warner, and then we can explain. She paused. Resisting didn't seem wise. I'm a bank manager. But my parents were Todd and Mary Trust. I swear I haven't done anything. Shh. Commissar Rosenstein? The woman consulted her clipboard once more. Checks out. Fantastic. You're dismissed, Mr. Warner. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the man leaned forward and wrapped her hands around her throat. She fought as adrenaline dumped into her bloodstream, swinging her hands at his face but he was far too strong. He squeezed right at the place where her throat had been sore. She felt lightheaded, suddenly weakening. Her vision darkened as he held his hands around her neck, feebly kicking a few more times at him from her seated position as her limbs grew heavy. A few seconds longer, and she blacked out. The darkness around her shimmers. Scenes of memory and fantasy and the lives of other people faded in and out, blending into each other. Dozens of lives unfolded, things done and things to come, scenes in which every viewpoint is hers. She recognized her own face on all of the others. She knew she was dreaming, and she is carrying it along in the current as she always is. Something is happening across each scene as she floats by, in the nothingness that runs between all of the disparate visions. A man, smiling and terrible, his hands reaching to strangle life from her, again and again. Each one of her lives coming to the same place. But it isn't death that he's after. Each time he comes not, she does not finish her. His progress along each of her facets is inexorable. What will he do when he reaches the end? Will he cycle around again, as she does? The thought is horrifying. She had only just returned from the world. Ekaterina must have gone out, thank God for that much. But I am still here, she thinks. Something must be wrong. She is in the hands of group. If they know about her work with Gessler, how much she had assisted, then they must be looking for her. Her specifically. The thought occurred to her that she needed to run. She needed to go the other direction, against the slow current that carries her back into her body. The physical form that she shares in turn with all the other versions of herself, fighting against her own dreams. She passed the scene. Gessler has arranged a web of electrical sensors all around her head, which she explains her latest thoughts on how brain regions might be related to each specific personality. It fades, lost to the current, and to the smiling man with his hands on her throat. Now another, her memory of the work flowing freely, bursting from the barriers of her mind as she struggled to dam the flood. Gessler is struggling to explain in his notes the physical co-location of which still doesn't want to call a soul. His his frustration and hers washes away, replaced even more quickly with flashing scenes. She tells him why she cannot walk every 213 days. He tells her how the Foundation falsely informed a family of supposed death, his supposed death in an Allied prison camp. She sketches more lines on a diagram on the wall with dozens of her own names. He asks her if he can trust the information supplied by Ekaterina. They can. She tells him that he is proposing is not a cure. He shouts triumphantly at the readings he has hoped to see on the brainwave monitor. Fragments watch by. The Foundation cannot be compromised. All of it has been for nothing. She fights the current, but the river merely flows around any resistance. And the flow is quickened by the smiling man. There is no choice but the way to turn, and hope that it is some other her, though it can see her face. His face. The sharp odor. Suddenly, she feels her eyes open. The flow is interrupted. It is her turn too. SCP-1041 startled awake. She coughs as a sharp, stinging vapor clears out her nose and sinuses. Her throat was on fire. She saw his man in front of her, putting a stopper in a small vial and placing it in his pocket. His cheeks are slightly red. Where am I? Who are you? Sorry, excuse me, I need to put this. Where am I? Who are you? She snarls the unfamiliar surroundings, putting her reflexes immediately on alert. You had better start talking now. The man, a soldier as she could tell from his uniform, leaned back in his chair, his eyes wide as he chuckled, apparently amused by her. She instantly reached for his side. Nothing there. She was dressed in some sort of prison outfit, different than the one she had in Vladimirsky. The memories further inflamed her growing anger. She stared at the woman standing behind the man before her. She was holding a clipboard, blank, impassive. Bitch, you tell me what's going on. Chernikov beamed at her. He seemed relieved. Charming. Let me guess. Svetlana Savchuk. She leaned forward, close to him. That's right. You all know who I am? He looked over to Commissar Rosenstein. She acknowledged him with a curt nod. He turned back to her. And what was the last thing you remember doing before waking up here, Svetlana? In a flash, she stood up, snatched a folding chair from underneath her, flattened it, taking it up in both hands, and swung as hard as she could at Chernikov's face. Chernikov ducked. Just slightly, the chair caught a few strands of hair standing at the top of his head. Without any seeming effort, he took a single step forward, his body shifting like a dancer, and drove his fist into her stomach. The chair clattered absently to the concrete floor as she went down in the heap. The entire exchange took about 2 seconds. The sound of his boots reverberating off the reinforced floors. He stood over her, stepping on her outstretched hands with just enough force to keep it in place, painfully. She looked up at him. In her eyes, he saw no trace of wildness, no trace of fury, no outward expression of pain. Despite being doubled up on the floor, she seethed without anger, her gaze holding the promise of rectifying the temporary slight visit upon her. A look for which Chernikov had developed a taste over the years. He picked up his hat. That's right, just as it's written in the report. Svetlana. Except unlike the guard in Block 4, I am alive. Commissar Resentin, we have our woman. He squatted down, coming face to face with SCP-1041, temporary host to Svetlana Savchuk, known Marchenko family soldier and thrice convicted murderer. Go fetch Gessler. Tell him we have our subject. We're ready to begin. And that was part 6 of the Matryoshka's tale. I'll be right back. Alright, it's time to get to the final structure of this. We're on part 7. There are only 4 more parts, including this one. Yeah, basically home stretch. Just getting some fun things set up. Around me in the physical world. Alright. Matryoshka, part 7. The old man was propped up in a corner. Some surplus Red Army blankets hastily bunched up to provide both warmth and stability for the frail humanoid. He peered out from beneath his hat with unseeing eyes, the ever-present smile lurking among the shadows of the cellar they all huddled in now. In the corner, for the first time since arriving in Poland, it was quiet. Thick black mucus slowly began to well out of his tear ducts. 2 filament-thin lines of viscous dark liquid trailed upward through his wispy eyebrows and up over his forehead, slowly. Juhas. So, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that anyway correctly. Continued to dab on his shirt, at his shirt with a rag. The blood had come out of his mustache at least. Spinella clenched his belt around Stillwell's shoulder, the makeshift sling holding up his bandaged wrist. Stillwell, or Spinella, Stillwell grimaced, the dull pain sullen and as his adrenaline wore off. His wary eyes. He warily eyed the steel door. I feel like we're back where we started. Coogan was pacing the small confine inside the room. Nonsense. Now Spinella is in the tight, confined room with us. Johas tossed the rag away. Most of the blood was off him, anyhow. 4 is better than 3. And I really appreciate that, by the way. So now that we've bandaged ourselves up, what's the plan? The doctor finished the cigarette casing, or fished the cigarette casing out of his coat. We're not going anywhere for a while, that's for sure, said Stillwell. Then again, this is a group safe house, or safe room anywhere. An operative could show up at any moment, so sheltering in place isn't a good idea either. Spinella exhausted a stream of blue smoke. We're at least safe from the Red Army in here, right? Tell me that much at least. Oh yes, group operatives operates independently now from the Red Army Central Command. There's a fierce rivalry, that one. They say that Zukov tried to have Zedrak arrested. Zerdev arrested back in 37. Juhaz was opening cabinets as he spoke. Now they got Stalin to change his mind about belonging. Well, no one talks about that. Why are we still listening to him? For all we know, he could be holding us here until group arrives to collect us. Coogan's pace grew quicker, his frustration building. Juhaz's attention remained in the supply cabinet as he rummaged. Go ahead then, walk in out. I'll even give you the rifle. He's just as screwed as we are if they show up, Coogan. Stillwell put on his good hand on Coogan's shoulder. We're in this together now, like it or not. I sure as hell don't like it, Spinella stubbed out his cigarette. That doesn't matter, said Stillwell. Grab about it when we get back. When we get back? Pretty optimistic if you ask me. When we get back? Pretty optimistic if you ask. Spinella was cut off by the sound of the visor slit on the iron door abruptly sliding open. A pair of pale blue eyes quickly scanned the room, and then it slit closed again. Shit! Stillwell quickly barked out orders. Coogan, Juhaz, grab whatever that was. Whoever that was. The two men sprang the door. Before they could reach it, the interloper calmly addressed them. I'm armed. I'll shoot anyone who opens that door, just as you'll shoot me if I open it. The voice was a woman's. Her English, flawless. We need to talk. Juhaz and Coogan looked at Stillwell. He held up a hand to them. Cautiously, he stepped closer to the door. Between the two men. So let's talk. Who are you? Stillwell thought he heard the unseen woman move closer to the door herself. I'm someone who knows where this room is. If anyone who knows that you're not group operatives, and you know I'm not group up either, since you're still alive. Stillwell thought the response over. Coogan looked over to him for what came next. Juhaz appeared to be searching his memories. Whoever she was, she had a point. If they had been found on group, the last thing they would have seen would have been the last thing they would have seen would have been the door being blown. Suppose you know what group is. Suppose we know what group is. Who says you're any better? Maybe you just want to lure us out. That may be, the woman responded, but I've come from Site 7. She let the silence hang for a moment. And you're never going to get there without my help. More sounds of shuffling from the other side of the door, she continued. I'm putting my gun away. Now, if you open the porthole, you'll see me with both my hands up, empty. Every moment I'm out here, we're all risk being discovered. Let me inside and we can talk further. Stillwell considered. He looked at Coogan. He was shaking his head. He looked at Juhaz. He merely looked back. Stillwell reached for the visor. No, Coogan whispered. He was undeterred. Stillwell slid the visor slit open. He saw a woman in a winter coat. Blonde, hair pulled back. His age, possibly younger. Her face inscrutable. The blue eyes meeting his unflinchingly. Her hands were in front of her, palms out, as promised. They held each other's gaze, each taking the measure of the other. She could be any number of things, leading them into a trap for God knows what reason, or on whose behalf. He thought one more time about how they could go into one more time about how they were going to get into Site 17. He scanned her face one more time. I'm going to open the door now. No one is going to make any sudden movements. We're going to talk and walk inside slowly. Whoever else is out there, if this is a trick, we're gonna make sure to take you with us. Coogan's eyes went wide. He resumed shaking his head furiously. I understand. Open the door when you're ready. The woman kept her hands visible as she spoke. Stillwell noticed her teeth. Noticed her teeth were made entirely out of steel. Coogan had picked up the rifle as Stillwell had been talking. Stillwell signaled him now with a glance, and Coogan trained the gun on the door. He reached for the handle and felt the heavy iron bolts on the door frame give way as he turned it. No turning back now. He slowly opened the door, the unoiled hinges squealing loudly. The woman stood in the doorway. A briefcase was on the ground beside her. The hallway beyond her was empty. Stillwell waved his good hand at her, motioning for her to come inside. She slowly picked up the briefcase and obliged. Her steps measured as she moved to the corner of the room next to the door. Stillwell shut it quickly and then told Coogan to lower the rifle. After a few seconds of grudging acknowledgement, he obliged. Now we can talk for real. Who are you? Stillwell stood directly opposite of her, about 2 paces away. Johaz moved next to Stillwell. Judging by field characteristics and what she knows, this must be Sergeant Ekternia Nechayev of the KGB, assigned to the 11th Dictator Directorate. That's the one that handles our sort of business. Sergeant? Directorate K. Necheva looked over Johaz. It appears like the rumors of a defector and Zerdev's reigns are true after all. I'm amazed the Foundation doesn't execute you when you came back. Johaz smiled. They likely will when they don't need me anymore. A better fate than the one that awaits all of us if Group has their way. Wait, if she's KGB, what's keeping her from telling Group that we're here? Coogan's rifle raised a little as he spoke. There is a war within the Soviet government right now, replied Johaz. The KGB is the only thing standing in the way of Stalin succeeding where Truman has failed. Something I'm sure you're not too keen on Kuba finding out, Sergeant. Nechayev's eyes flashed momentarily, a ripple across the composed face, passing almost instantly. Comrade Stalin has seen the results of our research. In time, the Politburo will remember why it has needed the Foundation in the past. Once we have subdued Group's madness. Stillwell interjected. Our research? So Site 7 has been compromised. Your research director, Dr. Gessler, had an arrangement with us. We are promised resources and shared data with the Foundation. The woman you know as SCP-1041 has assisted where she's been able. The results you should see for yourself. Nachayeva lifted the briefcase. She offered it to Stillwell. You open it, Stillwell eyed the briefcase wearily. Of course, said Nachayeva. She pushed in the latch of the briefcase, opening it slowly, in full view of the room. Assorted documents were inside. Stillwell accepted the now open briefcase with quickly rifling through the information. He paused at several, reading over lab reports here and a schematic there. He closed the briefcase. I've heard about research like this. The things that could have been done with it. This is what we grabbed in the little time we had. It was supposed to extract SCP-1041, but your group showed up. That we did. Stella shrugged. Where are you planning to take her? Stella paused. Somewhere safe, Nechayev replied. Stella paused. If what's in those notes is true, we can have faith that the research is legitimate. Juhaz interjected. Group would have liquidated the site entirely by now if there is nothing to it. Still not in agreement. We need to get to the bottom of this. We need to talk to 1041. That means getting her out of Site 7 alive, said Nechayev. A change of plans, I imagine. That's right. Still acknowledged without hesitation. Any ideas? The conversation was interrupted by Spinella suddenly cursing, shaking something off his pant leg, the corner of which the old man had lay quietly unnoticed in the motion was now enveloped in a spreading pool of thin black sludge, flowing up walls and over the ceiling in direct defiance of gravity. It had reached beyond the shadows, the black sheen encroaching on the room's scant lighting. Spinella jerked away from the spreading black ooze, a hole burning through the leg of his trousers where the liquid had made contact. They could hear drywall crumbling and support beams groaning beneath the old man now. Or behind the old man now. What the hell is it doing? Krugman pointed the rifle at the old man. The old man gazed back at the rifle with dead eyes. A rictus grin plastered on his face, shining through the black liquid that had gathered to corner him. What these specimens always do, with enough time, Nechayev calmly but firmly put a hand on Kugin's shoulder and pushed him aside. She reached in her coat and drew her pistol. Stella's first instinct was to knock the gun from his hand. Something deeper than instinct stayed his good hand. He watched as she raised her weapon. Nechayev shot the old man through his left eye. The report of the pistol was deafening in the confines of the room. So it felt like a hammer had been brought down next to his ear. A thick goblet of black sludge blattered against the wall directly behind the old man's head. He leaned forward slightly, coming to rest with the impact of the bullet in his skull. The shot left a wide, yawning, dark hole where his eye once was. Framed by the unchanging grin, the flow of the liquid across the ceiling and the walls seemed to stop. The sound of the walls continuing to give way did not. Spinell was first to speak. Finally, someone does something fucking sensible at once. He tucked a cigarette behind his ears. Stillwell looked at Nechayev. Do you know how to get into Site 7? She nodded, putting the pistol back in her coat. We can plan on a way there. Let's get out of here. The team gathered a stolen rifle and some meager stores of food and ammunition that had been left in the store safe room. As they filed out, Stoll looked one last time into the corner. The black substance had not encroached any further, but he could no longer see the old man. There was no time to consider the implication. He closed the door behind him. And that was part 7. Once again, I will be taking a short break between each part, so I will be seeing you, or speaking to you soon enough. Be right back. Alright, let's get back into it. First, give you guys the art again. And now, Matryoshka, Part 8. Try to keep up, old man. I'd like to be as far as possible from from Site 7 when their part of the plan starts. Spinella wheezed as he trotted, sweeping his flashlight in front of him and trying to avoid the bits of rubble and puddles lining the passage. The damp, moldering air of the forgotten catacomb felt like fire in his chest. He gripped the handle of the briefcase tightly. I'm younger than you, asshole. He struggled between breaths. He played Nechayekov's directions over and again in his head. It was about 70 meters until the passage split into three, at which point the two men were to take the tunnel to the right. Oh, it's been about 8 or 9 twists and turns deep into the darkness of the tunnel. The passageway was lined with the crude alcoves, and almost some empty, some containing stone sarcophagi, some just a resting place for a handful of dust and a few bones. Are you? You don't look a day over 70, my friend. The Foundation nurse sergeant smiled into the darkness. Keep feeling eat shit, wheezed the guy. The KGB operative had been well prepared. She had extensive knowledge of the infrastructure of Krakow, especially the access tunnels of the old city around Site 7. Almost as though the entire chain of events had been designed for them to be down there. Spinella found it difficult to imagine a catacomb network this long to be hidden, unless it was concealed intentionally by for other purposes. She may have had the web behind the ears operative from the Forge's shop fooled, but he saw enough. The two men came to the tunnel convergence, just as Nechayeva had indicated. They stopped, both taking a moment to catch their breath. Spinella took a cigarette from behind his ear and stuck in his mouth. Juhaz looked puzzled. It's remarkable, your dedication to smoking. Spinella looked at the 3 tunnels ahead. Can't get all the credit. Can't stop smoking the fucking things. Not like it matters now. I suppose not. Spinella reached his coat before hesitating. Tell me again, how this makes any sort of sense? We turn this briefcase over to the KGB at the end of the goddamn maze, and by their scouts' honor, they'll escort us out and share their information with Command? All of that cutting into brains, and you don't think? What does it matter what they promised? It was either taking the woman's offer or being shot by the patrols looking for us up there. Nothing stops us from setting fire to this thing before we get shot. Doesn't matter if it's KGB bullets or enemy bullets when they find us. Do you think this world you're in, that it's nothing but betrayal and backstabbing? But things don't work like that. Johaz glanced over his shoulder, growing steadily more impatient. There's an order to things. Motives making certain people predictable and relatable in their way. You ought to listen to yourself. Spinella pointed to Johaz as a cigarette for infinitive. Do you trust that metal-mouthed bitch back there? No, I have no reason to. But in our short acquaintance, she told us the truth, and we definitely have an enemy in common. I trust her motive. I trust her self-interest. Is it in their interest to give us back the information that we use as to get out of here? If I were them, I'd just shoot us and take the briefcase. They only have part of the picture. They're going to need our help to put it all together, and we're going to need theirs. Spinella Group has gone mad. What's in that briefcase is going to be worse than a few measly warheads if they get hands on it. Spinella shone his flashlight down on the briefcase, now resting at his feet. He showed it back at Jahaz, briefly flashing it at his eyes as he reached back into his coat. Very convoluted. A lot of stuff that can go wrong. But it sounds like you got it figured out. Some of us want to live past next month, Spinella. You don't spend a lot of time questioning the lifeboat when you're fleeing the ship. Spinella chuckled, stepping closer to Jahaz. Next month? What an idea. We need to go now. Next month is a possibility. All that matters is right now. Like you said, it's a sinking ship, right? Spinella shone the light directly into Jahaz's eyes. And right now, I'm not turning over Foundation research to the goddamn Russians, you fucking traitor. As Jahaz recoiled from the sudden glare, Spinella lunged forward and plunged the knife that had been in his hand deep into his left shoulder. Jahaz grunted at the sudden pain, instinctively swinging at Spinella's face. Spinella raised an arm, and Jahaz's fist struck his hand instead, sending the flashlight clattering off into the tomes. The chamber was cast into total darkness. There were only sounds. Two men battling in mortal rage, feet shuffling in the dirt and the dust, blows landing, blood splattering. The flashlight flickered briefly, forgotten now as it rolled underneath the straight sarcophagus lid before getting forgotten now as it rolled underneath the stray sarcophagus lid before guttering out. SCP-1041 struggled against the iron grip of the guards, marching her down to the main hallway. Her hands had been bound behind her. She filled the hall with promises of a slow, excruciating death for all present. No one responded, as they were inexorably made their way to the large double doors ahead. In her present incarnation, SCP-1041 was too murderously angry to notice the group of several lab-coated technicians following in her wake, nor did she consider the implications of the operating table directly ahead. Had she been less consumed with thoughts of killing the son of a bitch who had struck her, she might have been cognizant of a faint, barely perceptible feeling of rising panic around the edge of consciousness. The beginning of realization, struck without progression into knowledge. She only needed to turn her head to see the shadow of death. But SCP-1041 had other things in mind. The two guards ahead opened the double doors. The scene in front of them struck her. Even though her red-minded danger was ludicrous, soldiers in uniform scurried about, trying to avoid stepping on cables lining the floor. A ragged scientist making last-minute adjustments to a hastily assembled circuit box. Someone was setting up a movie camera and lights. Behind it all, a collection of seats surrounded the main operating area, all empty. If you only looked at the background, it would appear as though no one were to witness all the bustle. The guards ahead moved aside, and the main event greeted her. At last, the star of our show. Dr. Gessler, let's begin. Chernikov stood alone in the center of the operating theater, in front of a tall metal conduit sticking up from a mound of cables and wiring. All the electrical equipment brought into the room seemed to be wired up to the apparatus. Judging from the side was what was clearly meant to be an anchoring point for straining something. Svetlana Savchuk knew nothing of these things, but for something beyond her immediate consciousness, it suddenly occurred to her that this reminded her of a stake, fastened to mist kindling, ready to turn into a pyre at any moment. The guards led her to the technological stake. She fought back with renewed vigor, instinct informing her that she did not want to be in this place. Another guard joined the party, grabbing her by her legs as they picked her up and carried her. Once at their destination, her arms were fastened to the stake, tightly behind her, while her feet nestled among the masses of cables and wires below. Chernikov called out to the disheveled scientist that she spotted earlier. "Comrade, please, go and check the men's handiwork. This is not their specialty, after all." She loathed his arrogant, unconcerned tone. She would bury a shiv in his eye the first chance she got. The scientist came over. In his hands, a strange metal bowl of some sort. Wires trailed out of it. She noticed that, as he looked at her, he had tears in his eyes. She scowled at him. "Fucking pussy. Do whatever you gotta do and go weep somewhere else. Worthless lapdog." Her words washed over him. No reaction. As though he had expected them. He looked around to the back of the stake, looking at the restraints around her wrist. He leaned close to her ear, behind the stake, out of sight of the group delegation. Chernikov had ordered the camera rolling and had started speaking directly to him, saying something about the next advancement in the great Soviet scientific machine. "You do not know who I am, but I know who you are," he said, not whispering, but quiet enough to be heard, his words clipped, moving his lips as little as possible. "Inside, beneath all the layers." "Fuck you, little Russian servile." Chernikov continued his instruction, informing his intended audience that this is the first time the human soul has been located through science. "I've met the real part of you, the one inside all of the others. I know that you hear me somewhere in there. We've only met for a total of 6 days, but you contributed to the work that's been valuable in that time. Guys that inspected the wiring at the base of the stake." He affixed the metal bolt structure to the top of her head. Chernikov spoke to the ability to manipulate identity, to take the essence of what makes us human and do with it what was required. At this verbal cue, another group of guards wheeled a cage into operation theater with her, containing a thin, bent man of 30, starved into an appearance of 50. Hair falling out in clumps, the man caught SCP-1041's eye as he was wheeled in. She scoffed. "Weak political prisoner. The kind that lasted 2 days in Vladimirsky. That little part of you that lies at the center, I need to tell you. This is the extraction procedure that we had talked about before. The one that we had just finished designing the last time. They found out about it, and that's what they think they're going to do. But they cannot be allowed." SCP-1041 spat at the ground. "You going to grab something while I'm tied up? Go ahead. I'll tear off your hand." Geyser began attaching the ends of the wires to a port at the top of the stake. He kept his eyes on his work as he spoke. Chernikov boasted to the camera about harnessing the most fundamental element of the universe. "Our lives ended once group took Type Site 7. I know it must scare you to hear that. I wish it weren't true, but we could make sure that our work isn't turned to harm anyone else." The guard plunged a thick cable into the cage that had been wheeled into the theater. Chernikov had finished his remarks. There wasn't much time left. Geisler attached to the last wire. "What you see here is not the extraction procedure. It's something else that I've designed. It's going to kill you, and I've done this right, everyone else in this room. What's going to happen is monstrous. To apologize for this kind of betrayal is obscure, but I'll do it anyway. The doctor made some adjustments to a panel on the side of the stake. SCP-1041 felt the stick shudder slightly as a set lever was engaged. She heard a faint humming sound start, seemed to come from all around her. Guys then turned to walk away. I'm sorry. You deserve so much better than this. This is all I have to offer. This is the best I could manage. Please, forgive me. The doctor walked away. SCP-1041 tried shouting the curse words after the weak little collaborator. Something stopped her words in her throat. Her hatred was ebbing and flowing somehow. For the first time since she was a little girl, she felt fear creeping around her consuming wrath, only to be replaced with a wave with such seething hate, stronger for having been pushed back. She growled. The desire to hurt all those around her possessed her, pulsing within her. Animal savagery coursed throughout her mind before draining along again. In those brief moments of that obscene absence of hate, she saw that the camera was now trained directly on her. Technicians surrounding it, Chernikov and the bitch with the glasses at his side, observing. It was a self-satisfying smile. She had no expression at all. The thought occurred to her, seemingly from nowhere, that this must have been what wolves felt as they sit in the trap, waiting for the last shot to come from the hunter. As the renewed hatred flowed back into her, twice as strong as before, the last words of Svetlana heard and understood were those of Chernikov. Dr. Geisler, please begin the procedure. And that is part 8. Oh, man. Things are getting intense. I had to find out. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Possibly less. While they recover. See you soon. Alright. Let's try and get through the next part. Now to bring up the slideshow again. Oh, hold on, give me a second. This PC has a slight problem. There's nothing that should be worried about. Alright, let us get through part, I believe it is now, part 9. 1 second. Huh. The internet seems to be slowing down a little bit. Let's see. Actually seems to be a general computer slowdown. Oh, come on. Alright, let's try. We're gonna come in another window. Oh, up. Oh, man. I'm real sorry for this interruption. But it's... yeah, this seems to be a bit of a problem with everything's just slowing down right now. So, excuse me while I try to fix that. Oh. Alright. It is back up. And I need to close out of that. Alright. Matryoshka, Part 9. Stowell poked his head up, slowly peering through the grimy window pane, down at the surgical theater. Below their perch on the mezzanine, he sank back down. Kogan was busy tying the sheets they had raided from the supply closet into knots. Matviev was cleaning the scavenged AK-47 from the Foundation's crew misadventure earlier in the day. 2 weapons, the contents of laundry room, 9 rounds of ammunition remaining, and no plan. There's definitely Gessler down there. They won't be certain what he's doing, but it sure looks like assisting with whatever they're doing to 1041. I think we need to move now. Matveyev frowned at the disassembled parts spread out before her. She picked up the bolt and carefully dabbed at some unseen grit with a rag. How did he look? Pretty bruised up. He returned the bolt to a larger assembly, picked it up, and turned it over to inspect it. So he resisted. That's good news for us. I don't think whatever he's doing down there is going to be good news. He thought of 1041 as a colleague. That was one of the reasons he kept so much of what we were doing from your command. He wouldn't willingly participate in Chernikov's experiment. No, he's planning something. Stillwell crept up again for another look at the scene below. He seemed awfully certain of that. Cherneva slid the bolt carrier assembly packing back into place. The rifle's assembled parts clicking and sliding cleanly. There is no certainty, but there's possibility. That's why we're here together, no? Still concealed the point silently. Conceded the point silently. Nechayev continued. Sometimes the things aren't scientific. You have to look into a man's heart and make the best guess. What do you see when you look at Herr Dr. Geisler? He lowered himself back down along the window sledge. I see a Nazi war criminal whose expertise we happen to need in 45. Nechayev continued reassembling a rifle. No, you're letting emotions cloud your thinking. Look deeper. Kuki looked up from the turning knot. Geisler's a Nazi? Stillwell thought, working to temper down his initial revulsion. He saw the scene in front of him and added the facts. It doesn't make sense, but then much of what he had seen didn't either. He's driven. He wouldn't have agreed to sever old ties and come work for us if he didn't have something to continue working on. He would have just went with the guys from Paperclip. The KGB officers nodded. He's tied to the work. He sees nothing else. That is his loyalty. Groove has a purpose in mind for his work. He just wants to exist. But what can he do to stop them? Nechayev had finished assembling the rifle. You're aware of what SCP-1041 does, but not who she is. And the answer to that is that she is the vessel for the souls of dozens of people. She is a living laboratory for Dr. Geisler's work. It was in that laboratory that he learned how to isolate and manipulate a human soul. Coogan had stopped tying shoes together, entrenched now in the conversation. Stillwell was watching the scene below again. So what is Chernikov doing down there? He's extracting one of the souls. One that he's identified specifically for his needs. December, responded Stillwell. Nechayev nodded. Dr. Geisler is the only one who fully understands the process, and it's too complex to just torture out of someone and hand off. But there's no way he would willingly do what Chernikov asked him. But now, he would have had half a dozen opportunities to kill himself with the equipment down there, and no one could even stop him. Something is coming. Still kept his eyes on Geisler. He was affixing something to SCP-1041's head. And so, we wait. Chernikov slammed home the magazine into the reassembled rifle. And so we wait, she replied. You have combat experience? Stillwell nodded. From Tarawa to Okinawa. She considered his answer. She concluded her thoughts by reaching into her coat, retrieving her pistol, and offering it to Stillwell, the grip facing him. Stillwell took it, opened it to take a look. 3 bullets, he said. Thank you. His voice was sincere. Chenavaz nodded at his sling. That arm's not of much use to us. I'll take the rifle. Dugan checked his handiwork. He cracked his knuckles. She could only stand by as the energy coursed through her. For the first time, her movement in the place is not her own. She feels pulled away from the process of the others, away from the possession of the others. The entirety of this place, its rules never clear to begin with, was being thrown into disorder. Snippets of other lives so brief as to be snippets. Otherwise, as to be snippets flutter past, no sense or context to any of the memories, being scattered aloft into the empty, endless sky. A birthday cake, 3 men in an alley, a dog jumping into a river, the scent of aftershave, bombers over a village. A dull red beacon in the darkness. It looked like a person. She floats, or runs, or scrims, or scrambles to it. And it isn't long before it is clear that it's one of her. The one that Chernikov wants. The one that should not be let out. The memory images intensify here. A giant man looming overhead. Fists on their way to crush down. A forgotten cell, open to the winds of a blizzard. Blood-stained 50 rubles. 500 ruble notes filled for the briefcase. A man having scars tattooed on his knees. Guns, knives, fire. She steps closer, trembling from the feeling of hate pulsating from the red apparition, sickening her to her core. The images were all starting to coalesce into the same scene. Frozen earth, craters, twisted corpses, burned out tanks, columns of smoke on the horizon. A city block pounded into rubble, the tallest stack 3 meters high. She's close enough to see that she's screaming. Of all the connections to this place, that may be the same one she wished to be rid of before, but that had dwarfed into nothingness by the surface suffusion of terror that she is now feeling, watching herself be ripped forcibly from the unknown into the unknowable. The energy that is reordered, everything is focused on the red woman before her, inside her. She's being called somewhere else. She feels like she's being held upside down over a cliff. She watches herself. The only thing more fearsome than what is happening being the thought of touching that faint red specter, radiating into fear-enhanced rage. Her chest is hammering. Watching the scene, she feels faint. She feels as though she is going to pass out, but reptile impulses fight the feeling of consciousness slipping away. She dares not let her eyes close, must keep her words before it's stolen away forever, into the dark. She is on her knees, her hands over her ears to block out the silent screaming from her identical sister as she looked away. The darkness swims before her eyes, feeling drawn up to the same place but rooted to the spot that she is at the same time. On the most basic level that living beings can know, she knows that this is dying. It is not peaceful. The red woman ascends or descends. Lag. Or dissipates, and her terror at contact evaporates as she claws at the apparition, desperate to keep it in place, afraid of the hole that would be left inside her. Her hands pass through nothing, cheerful voice of the hated man echoing now as something in a realm is breached, an opening tears asunder, silent thunder that should shake the hills to pieces if it ever struck in the real world. Searing light floods our world, light that has never meant to be shine here, the light of an alien star stripping its worlds of the sky and the ground of everything in between. The pieces of her that has been chosen expand suddenly, her fury turning into a background radiation burning the entirety of this interior universe, consuming everything but not killing it, inexplicably. If there were any sense to this world, her flesh would have been blasted away by the energy sustaining this hatred. But here she is, watching her own world have watching her own annihilation. And just when all other concepts and ideas and everything is overwhelming by singular, burning animus to everything that has ever lived and will live. The Red One is gone. The world is back. She has died. This is the first one. This is the first time one of her has died. She cannot comprehend it. All she is able to do is hold her hands to her face. Her eyes squeezed shut so hard that she could not want to open them to see if she breathed, to see if her palms are covered in tears or blood. All she can speak is a hitched, stifled screech when she finds her breath somewhere between a sob and a scream. A thought supplied by one of the others here, the first to recover their wits. God help whoever is out there. Eyes only. Group December clearance. Recovered footage. Summary. Site 7 incident. 0113. Major Chernikov finished intro. Remarks. 0115. Procedure initiated. 0117. Visible red haze formed around research subjects. 0121. Arcs of electricity sporadically appear between research subject and transplant subject. Voices off camera are heard to state that activity is normal. 0123. Red haze appears to move from research subject to transplant subject. 0124. Transplant subject explodes. 0125. Footage ends. 0126 to approximately 0230. Remainder of Site 7 incident presumably transpires. End. I am showered in human blood. The whole theater is painted red by the intended recipient. He was an unsuitable vessel for the experiment. Or Geisler had sabotaged the experiment. Impossible for me to find out now. I don't need to reach into him to know that he's dead. The ring of bodies around the Foundation's freak is assumed assurance of that. The Major needed Mike's protection. He is still alive. That I need to confirm. Not sure what I would have done. The terrible thoughts. Suppressed them. I am a I am a political officer of the people of the Soviet Union. I must protect the people who would protect them from themselves. I must endure it if we are to endure. Better, There is a flap of skin, too, stuck to my... Better. There's a flap of skin stuck to my boot. I will remove it. I am holding the Major. I cannot carry him the way he carried me out, but I can move him away from this. Consequences of this failure are terrible thoughts. Zerda will be angry. Suppress them. The Major must survive. That is my duty. I will allow these thoughts because they help me to do my duty. Several people in the back are still alive. They are in great distress, screaming, attacking each other, bleeding. They have given their lives to the people one way or another. I will honor them later. I must get the Major out. He is not heavy like the dead are heavy. I am grateful for that, as I drag him to the exit. Glasses breaking, entire windows breaking. 2, no, 3 people. Guns, scaling ropes. They mean harm. The Major will not be harmed. I will harm them. I will do mine. Coogan hit the ground, letting go of the improvised rope made of tied bed sheets. His shoes crunched on broken glass. He did not remember how he got here. What the hell was that? Who's the Major? Why am I? Stay close. Stay focused. Stillwell barked to make himself heard over the horrific din. The people who had survived were shrieking, were screaming, were growling like animals as they tore at each other with their bare hands. A man missing his eye was making ungodly noises that stood out above the frame. Right, yes, sir. Guggen moved close to Stillwell. Nichayeva on his other side, gun in her hands. Remember, keep the mission in your head. What's your job? Grab 1041, even if I don't remember why, even if I'm somebody else. Nichayeva barked now. Until we're out of here, there aren't any boundaries between minds. We need to concentrate. The word concentrate started to echo in Kukin's mind. A ruined church appeared in his mind. He was a little girl now, an older man. Someone he trusted yelled the words concentrate at him. Over and over, the memories passed to Stillwell, who recognized the church. Cathedral of Saints Boris and Glenn, destroyed in the siege of Leningrad. The memory filled fear and kindled fear in him, and kind he did not felt in a long time. He tried to keep the image from coming back. Nechayeva clapped Kugan on the back as he said to go. She saw Stillwell hesitate. She nudged him gently. Even in the midst of death, she knew that he had just remembered. She was sympathetic. He stirred, refocused, and advanced. She moved alongside and covered the other line of sight. Good Commissar was dragging Chernikov away. Perfect. She lined up her rifle and took aim. Suddenly, she was in the jungle. The cold instantly replaced by sweltering, crushing heat. Creatures buzzing and hissing in the trees. Her sights were a scope now. A man's head, facing away. Dead in her sights. What was she waiting for? Couldn't do it. Not on the back of the head. The act was treacherous enough. She needed to see his face. He was her commanding officer. It was what she owed him. The man turned around, talking to someone unseen. The Boston caller identified him as the American lieutenant. She could tell that immediately, that independently of the memory holder. She caught herself again as she felt the memory squeeze the trigger, and she was back to the present. Suddenly, she was aiming at nothing. Out of the corner of her vision, she saw Coogan had freed 1041, who was not conscious. Please let her not be dead. The large Foundation operative had holstered her over his shoulder, making his way out. She could not see where Stillwell went. She looked over. Pain, white-hot, lacing pain, as a piece of metal laced through her side, making her crumble reflexively, screaming despite herself as she fell to the ground. She glanced downward and saw a crooked piece of thick wire protruding from her leg, snapped off from the assembly somewhere in the explosion. ended the man in the cage. She scatters around quickly, grunting in pain with every movement as she struggled to sit upright. Movement focused her eyes as the woman stepped into view, impassively surveying her. A wreath of twisted metal shards and lethal flechettes of discarded wiring circled in the air over her head. Eddying and swirling like a small dust devil, she looked down at Cheov. Another piece of wiring flew from the mass overhead, heading for her face. Nechev rolled over in a quick spasm of movement, the piece of wiring burying itself in the tiled floor right next to her head. She brought the rifle to bear as her adversary's heart. No time at all to think, she squeezed the trigger. The gun clicked uselessly. Cursing, she tried to throw the gun aside, only to have it shoot out of her hands, drawn to the infernal commissar that stood over her now, as though she had had it on a string the whole time. Calmly, the metal detritus still circling overhead. Commissar Rosenstein, Rosenstein looked curiously at the rifle before detaching the magazine, looking at it and putting it back. Very easy to jam these, the commissar said. Just a machine, like everything else. The commissar aimed the rifle at Necheva, the slight knell in her heart. She scrabbled behind her for anything that might be a weapon. There were 3 shots. Red flashes bloomed in front of the commissar's uniform in the midsection. Small droplets of blood as she reflexively coughed, falling to the ground. Still, well rushed from behind as shards of the ruined metal rained down on the 3 of them from there. He bent down to Necheva, wrapping his functional arm around her, helping her to her feet. Her leg was afire with agony. Every time she tried to put weight on it, through the pain she focused on Stillwell's words. Let's go, cooking this out with 1041. Let's move. He dropped the gun, now useless with its ammunition expended, and moved to help her support her weight. On her left side, they hurried to the exit, her hobbling as fast as she could, trailing blood behind her, not bothering to check the moaning from behind her. If the commissar could gather any sort of self-awareness through her wounds, they would be instantly dead. No point in looking back. Thoughts flashed involuntarily between the 2 operatives as they shuffled hurriedly to the side exit. Jungles, ruins, artillery fire, mortar rounds, survival, treachery. As the race for survival, defining memories for both came involuntarily. Other acquaintances with death, 2 lives briefly shared. She knew from Leningrad that one could never truly be prepared for death, but she had made as much peace as she could. That didn't stop her from desperately hoping that the extraction team had answered an emergency signal. If things had gone well, they would be met by Petrov's men, as well as Benella and Juhaz's. If not, the exit did not truly matter. Sweat beaded on her forehead. She decided that she would not throw up, no matter the circumstances. Every step was a new threshold of pain. They had reached the main entrance. Keep going, she told Stillwell. He nodded, his assent. Screams, moaning, and suffering were the sounds from behind him. In front of him, Coogan waited, the unconscious SCP-1041 in his arms. Though reunited, the group of operatives opened the blast doors of the entrance. They stepped out into the cold. And that was part 9. And, of course, like always, I'll be taking a short break. while I recover after, oh man, all that. And then we'll be doing the epilogue. And that'll be the end of the stream. The next stream, I'll hopefully finish the canon of Coldest War, because the rest of the tales are not nearly this long. So, I will be seeing you very soon. Alright, it's time to finish the Matryoshka's tale. Matryoshka, epilogue. Stillwell resisted the urge to scratch beneath the cast on his arm. Cigarette smoke had been something he was fond of, but in the close room, with the interviewing officer exhaling it constantly like a bellows, it was distracting. It reminded him too much of Spinella. Director Waltz, can you confirm the status of Dr. Frank Spinella and Agent Laszlo Juhas? Agent Stillwell. The last contact I had with them was at the group safe house. I can't speak to where they are now. Director Walters. That was after he turned over Dr. Geisler's research to Dr. Spinella with instructions to give to KGB. Agent Spinella. That's correct. Director Walters. You realize that you're admitting to. You realize what you're admitting to. Passing classified information to an entity we're at war at? Agent Spinella. We're not at war with KGB. It's all in the report. Detective Walters. That's not to mention responsibility for 2 MIA personnel. The soldier's flashlight shone down the darkness of the tunnel. He held a handkerchief to his face. The stench of new death was present alongside the rusty odor of ancient death. He must be close. For a moment, the terror of not being able to fulfill the commissar's orders subsided. The briefcase, or at least clues to where the briefcase must be, were close. But the scent of death was freezing him. Something about it spoke with a deeper decay. He was no stranger to the carnage. Group afforded many opportunities to antiquate yourself, but he shivered. He proceeded further into the catacomb. It wasn't long before the source presented itself. His flashlight fell upon a body splayed on the ground. A man in a rumpled coat, middle-aged, if he didn't miss his guess. Pretty sickly looking. There was a knife protruding from his dress. No briefcase in sight. The soldier cursed, holding the handkerchief close to his face as he knelt down to inspect the body. If the major survived, he would likely skin all of them if the briefcase was not recovered. He prayed to a god that he no longer believed in, that there would be something here to lead him to the missing research. He rifled through the dead man's pocket. A wallet yellowed a Polish identification card. A fake, but expensive fake. He checked the name against the details in his memory. The man who had been stopped at the checkpoint. This might be one of the Foundation operatives. Something to go on, maybe. As he examined the identification card closer, a small drop of black sludge dripped onto the dead man's photograph. His face was rapidly eaten away by the sludge dissolving the card before the soldier's eyes. Quickly, like something burning, he tossed it aside. He trained his flashlight on the ceiling of the tunnel, just over his head. It was covered in dark, viscous slurry that seemed to shimmer iridescently as his light traveled across it. And in the middle of the sludge-covered ceiling, a grinning, dead-eyed face looked back at him. A thin black tendril began to reach down from around above. In moments, screams filled the catacombs. Director Walters. And the matter of Agent Patrick Coogan. You've sent him on a subsequent detail for which he has yet to return. Agent Stillwell. That's right. I think he'll be busy with that for a while. Director Walters. You mean absconding with the designated SCP object? A humanoid at that? Absconding? No, just part of the evacuation. Agent Coogan is maintaining control of SCP-1041. The feeling of frigid air on her face awoke her from a deep slumber. Dreamless sleep. She was in a man's arm, being carried like a child. Her first impulse was to flail out of his grasp, but when she tried to move, her muscles resisted. Her body racked with aches and profound, crippling fatigue as she returned to consciousness. She shifted barely in the grasp. Where am I? SCP-1041's words came out weakly, barely audible over the wind. The man carrying her responds, Ma'am, I don't have a lot of time to explain, but you're in the care of an organization that I'm not at liberty to talk about right now. We're on our way out of here. She was confused. Who was she? She shrugged to remember. The man's voice was hurried but kind. I'm not sure you're going to wake up. Thank God for that. SCP-1041 opened her eyes a little more. It was dark. Streetlights blurred her vision, the cold and wind bringing tears to her eyes. Where are we going? I have orders to bring you to a safe haven, ma'am. I'd explain more, but I don't really know a whole lot right now. Sorry. The man stopped at an intersection. The streets were deserted at this time of night. You'd be looking for some... What's your name? He began searching the night. Coogan, ma'am. She paused. I don't know mine, or I'd give you one. Or I'd give it to you. That's okay. Stillwell tells me that that'll probably change tomorrow. From the direction Coogan was looking, a black car came speeding down the street, snow kicking up behind its tires. The back end fishtailed slightly as it rounded a corner, but still under the driver's apparently expert control. The sounds of brakes squealing. Sound of brakes squealing, and the car came skidding to a rest in front of them. Without hesitation, Coogan opened the rear passenger door, gently placed SCP-1041 in one seat, and sat in the other. The door was barely closed before they lurched back into motion, tearing down the empty streets of industrial Krokawa. A man not clearly visible in the dark addressed them from the front passenger seat, not bothering to turn around. You must forgive my man here. He drives really fast, but then we need to go real fast. His voice was warm, a slight German accent in her ears. Coogan took off his coat and laid it across SCP-1041. Thank you, sir. I wasn't sure that we'd make it out. No trouble. We look out for our own men and our women. The man in the front seat rolled down his window slightly as he lit a cigarette. I hope you don't mind. It's important to remember that we're not out yet. We have several countries to go before we pass the Iron Curtain. So where am I heading, sir? The man in the front seat exhaled, his smoke taken quickly outside by the rushing night air. With luck, with any luck, to a friend's house, replied 058. Director Walters, you spent 15 hours in KGB custody. What information did you reveal to them? Agent Stillwell. Beyond pleasantries and what they already knew from Dr. Geisler, nothing. Dr. Walters. So you weren't interrogated? Agent Stillwell. No, I was treated quite well, actually, as they promised. The train car rattled, the wind whistled. The straw on the ground and the rickety wooden slats of the boxcar scant protection from the cold. Stillwell still had meetings in strange places, and this was one of the most unusual offices he had been in. The man called Petrov held a small piece of gauze in place over the wound in Nechayeva's leg as another operative wound tape around it. He offered a flask to her. She waved it off. To Stillwell, with his long white beard and bald head, Petrov looked grandfatherly as he cared for his wounded operative. He was tempted to think of Tolstoy, but paused to consider that one didn't grow old and get to be in charge of a KGB directorate by being grandfatherly. Petrov took the flask from his man and dosed the gauze with some of its clear contents. Once again, the planner was wrong. They never listen. These are new times, I told them. Things in play that weren't there before. They played chess in a miserable prison brawl. Oh well. Any word from your contacts? Asked Stillwell. Petrov shook his head. No one present at the meeting point. Our sources haven't alerted us to anyone new in group custody. It's possible they skipped elsewhere into the city. You don't need to soften it. We all know that we were getting in here. Stillwell's good hand kept crept to his stomach. No one can know that. I don't think I would be escorting a Foundation officer to safety yesterday. Petrov tightened the wrapping around Nacheva's leg. She muttered curses in Russian. If that's what I'm doing. I think we have bigger problems than pointing guns at each other right now. Nachayeva braced herself as she planted her feet on the ground. She grunted as she stumbled to stand on her bandaged leg, biting her lip with steel teeth. Stillwell examined this good hand. She gripped onto his wrist, holding herself upright. There. Good as new, said Petrov, laughing. December is a problem for all of us, said Nechayeva, catching her breath. We don't do much with the research that Gessler shared with us. We didn't do much with the research that Geisler shared with us. It was mostly to be able to sabotage Group's project. Nechayeva. Nechayeva nodded at the owner of the flask. He fished around his pocket, retrieving a small canister. He offered it to Stillwell. Foundation operative accepted. This microfilm has everything we need that we know. It looks like we both have an idea what's going on, though. What about the rest of our sites? We're pulling out of the Soviet Union. Are you going to stop us? Petrov frowned. This is nasty business. None of us can deal with the holes in reality by ourselves. I think even in different times we all understood that. The old man motioned to the flask again. He took a pull. Our first order of business is Zardev. Then we can get back to shooting each other. You received no interference with the KGB. And my men? Safe passage, same as yourself. We'll need every person we can get for this fight. Petrov smiled. Stillwell nodded. Rationally, they would have shot him long beforehand if there was a problem. But the thought had never really entered his mind. The thought of guns reminded him, however. He reached his coat, took out Netchev's pistol, and he offered it to her. Thought I should have it back. She took the flask from Petrov. She shook her head. No need. It's out of bullets. Nechayeva smiled briefly. Glint of reflected moonlight. She took a pull from the flask and offered it to Stillwell. He took it. Two new friends, Stillwell said as he raised the flask. May we live long enough to be enemies again. Director Walters. How'd you characterize a mission in which 4 men and a provisional SCP object were sent out, and only the mission leader returned? Still, given the mission, I'd call that a success. Dr. Walters. If this were a normal time, we would hang you out to fucking dry, Stillwell. This was a goddamn disaster. What do you have to say for yourself? These aren't normal times, sir. LaForge laughed uproariously, jamming his thick finger at the transcript in his hand. Holy shit, you really said that to him? Still a smile. Yes, indeed, sir. The sub-director continued laughing as he read, pausing occasionally to spit a steam of tobacco juice into a disposable paper cup in his other hand. When he finished, he tossed the document into a waste bin in the corner of office. He leaned back in his chair to recover from his hilarity. Make an agent of you yet, kid. Hot damn. LaForge spat again. You know, Dean, I'll be straight with you. I didn't expect to see you back here again. I mean, I'm glad, but the mission was a goddamn suicide run. I told Chain of Command that. Stillwell nodded. Yeah, guess that made it easy to face being drummed out in Walter's office. LaForge spat diversely. Walter's an asshole, but he's not a dummy. You ain't going. You ain't gonna get canned, even if you weren't hiding out in a rented office in Mexico City. You did good out there. I ain't gonna forget it. And even old Walter won't either. The young agent sat. A great feeling of desolation came over him at the prompting of LaForge's praise. An emptiness that sat in his chest, making him feel lighter, insubstantial. The distant sound of twisting metal and grinding voices rang in his ear. For an instant he closed his eyes. A single light in the dark went out. He willed the feeling away. Breathing deeply, after 3 breaths, it left. He was getting better at this. LaForge had the professional courtesy to not notice. So, kid, I've gotten a buzz in my ear from the higher-ups. What if you are cooking up for Coogan and that Skip that he's bodyguarding? Stillwell, calmly and steadily. I have some thoughts on that. Colonel Ruslan Zerdev, hero of the Soviet Union and commander of the 4th Division Abnormal Occurrence Commission, also known as Group, took his seat in the balcony of the People's Auditorium, as his organization has arranged, and looked down at the stage, and all of the other functionaries attending this planning committee tonight. Rumors that he had started, that Stalin himself was to congregate the committee on the successful preparation of the 19th Congress. As it happened, he knew that rumors to be correct. He knew the rumors to be correct. He had arranged Stalin's presence here personally. The general's secretary emerged onto the stage to thunderous applause, exactly as he had anticipated. As Stalin spoke, it was difficult to hear his words from as high up as Colonel Zerdev was, but it didn't matter. He was reading a copy of the speech weeks ago, as his adjutant had drafted it. It was committed to memory. The colonel looked at the colonel. I can't say the word right. Sorry. Looked at his watch. 2 minutes into Stalin's speech, he would have given the signal to his men right about now. Zerdev watched the second hand on his score. Blanksy Bane watched sweep by. 25 seconds after his signal, all essential personnel would have been cleared out of the building. 10 seconds after that, The doors to all balcony seats would have been locked and armed guards posted. He still had the personnel in place to do that. Such a waste. Stalin's speech was full of party-approved rhetoric and empty congratulations to men and women who had lived in mortal terror of him just several years before. Zerdev had some reservations about his plan. Initially, it took him several hours, in fact, to convince himself to go through with it. He did not entertain any regrets since then. At the first mention of the new 5-year plan, the front section of the audience would have stood up simultaneously. 5 minutes into Comrade Stalin's speech, it would have been too late to turn back. The first 5 rows of the party attendees would have been on the stage. Zerdev had relished the idea of watching the look on Stalin's face as the tide approached. In the next minute, probably minute and a half, the crew down below, possessed of murderous white-hot hatred, not of their own making, would have torn Stalin limb from limb as the rising star of the Communist Party looked on. Zerdev had specified to his scientists that those not complicit in the act must be made to feel approving of it. They had been close. Colonel Zerdev watched the entire speech, superimposing what could have been onto the banal, unproductive events below. When Comrade Stalin was finished, the crowd rose to its feet, a lusty ovation for their triumphant leader. All party members showing the proper enthusiasm for the General Secretary. Zerdev rose to his feet as well, clapping for the expected minutes of praise that was due to Stalin. He looked down at the scene before him. Anyone looking back up would see a reflection of the scene that Zerdev had tried and failed to orchestrate. Thwarted by what his men told him was a combined Foundation KGB operation. Anyone looking up would have seen Zerdev in a rare moment of dropping his impassive mask, his true face radiating the hatred and fury that he had sought to transplant into his would-be accomplices through otherworldly means. Zerdev had expected to proclaim a national tragedy this evening, along with a message to the nation to find the courage to forge a new path in the face of American provocation. Instead, he was one of 1,000 obedient lapdogs, clapping for favor, capering for Kuba's good graces. The colonel continued clapping as Stalin basked in the adulation from the audience below. Someone was going to pay dearly for this. And that, my good listeners, is the end of this tale. The tale of Matryoshka. And it's also going to be the end of the stream. I hope all of you had a good time, and thank you for coming. Have a good night.